Good morning, my friends. It is Wednesday, time for After the Coffee, and it is hump day. Yes, we are there. And it's amazing how quickly these weeks fly by. Now, on Monday morning, Cup of Joe, we were talking about conflict. And conflict is a huge thing. Believe it or not, we experience conflict, some of us, on a daily basis within our work environment, at least, if not possibly, at home, interpersonal conflicts. And I've had a large debate with many of my colleagues about this because I'm still a proponent of saying, the first thing that we need to do is to be able to master our emotions from the standpoint of, if you and I have a disagreement and I get irate, I just go off, what happens? That's it. It's over. You shut down or you become more combative, and then we fight. We fight. Do we resolve anything? No, because fundamentally, what happened, the fundamental conflict here is the need to be right. I need to be right. You need to be right. And so we get into this verbal confrontation for the sole purpose of being right. Not very productive, kills relationships, causes marriages to break up. These are all the dynamics that come from our limbic system, the amygdala, and the other centers of the brain that control our emotions. It never even reaches the frontal cortex because we don't give it a chance to do so. So if we can control our emotions, right? Take a lesson from Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning, and say in between stimulus and response, there is a space. When that space is like this, it is not a response, it's a reaction. And it's coming from a part of our brain that doesn't even have thought. It just, boom. That's the point I'm posing to many of my peers. And some understand, but they're saying it's not the most important thing. And this is important because this point came out because we could rationally discuss it, bring the neocortex in, our critical thinking part of our brain, where our problem solving and decision making lies, with the objective of not being right, but to finding the truth, finding the answer of what it is we can do to have a better outcome. This is where the old concept, and I say old because it was 1980s, of the win-win concept, that we both walk away with something more. Because when we go into that need to be right conflict, what happens is we create a lose-lose. You don't get anything and I don't get anything, but in our egos, we're right. Think about how that impacts our politics. So anyway, first, we need to control our emotions. We need to be open-minded and receptive. And we have to have the ability to give the other person space. From the standpoint, we say, I want to understand where you're coming from. Share with me your rationale. I want to listen. And it's not listening with the intent to judge the other person. It's truly the intent to understand where they're coming from. And perhaps you may even find yourself agreeing, at least in part, to what they're saying. That's what we call common ground. We have an area in your thinking that we both share equity, right? We both support that. So if we focus in on that alone and begin to grow the edges of that out. Now, so we listen, and it's very difficult, right? It's very difficult for us to listen without having that little parrot on our shoulder going, oh, I don't believe that. That's a load of crap, blah, 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 right? We have to quiet the parrot. And we have to be present enough to listen with the intent to understand where they're coming from, both emotionally, that's our EQ side, right? And intellectually. They both have to have parity. Listen, even if you do not agree, listen with the intent to understand at least their rationale. Remember, understanding is not about agreement, it's about understanding. And so when we do that, and I've facilitated hundreds of teams and have come in to many conflicts, right? And a lot of these conflicts were really a debate over semantics. They were saying the same thing. They were choosing different words because in individuals, different words have different meanings. So we had to break things down into very basic fundamental levels, basic fundamental definitions of the words that we were speaking. And oftentimes those heated debates turned out to be, oh, okay, well, when you say that, I'm thinking this. Oh, no, that's not what I meant. We're thinking the same thing. But oftentimes, where those discussions go wrong is that ego or that need to be right. That if I'm going to win, somebody's got to lose. Otherwise, it doesn't feel like a real win to me. And we have to abandon that thinking. Think win-win, which is a challenge. It's not easy. I don't mean to flippantly throw that out there with an understanding that, oh, okay, everything's going to be great. We can solve world peace now. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. But we first have to remove our emotion as best we can. Can we completely wipe it out? Probably not. But we can subdue it enough to be able to listen to the other person, to fully understand without interruption. Now, you can take notes and say, you don't mind if I take some notes? Because they're making some very good points here. You write those down. And they are good points because they're probably points you want to rebut. And if you find yourself in rebuttal, then you're not truly listening to understand most of the time. Or you could say, I like what you're saying, but I have some concerns. And would you be willing to work out those concerns with me? Can we talk through those? Because I trust that both of us in the end want to come to the truth and come to a better outcome together, right? That's how that works. That's the whole process. So some basic rules. Number one, after being able to control your emotions, allowing the other person the space to share their thoughts, their feelings, the rationale behind what's going on. And during that time, being silent, and that doesn't mean, doing things like, come on, body language, facial expression is as much of a tipping point as to what direction this conversation is going to go, as much as if you were to say something that was disrespectful. Okay, so that brings me to the second one. Outside of emotion is always maintain respect. Listen with the intent to understand. As you are listening, you can, nod your head, right? We call that the active listening thing. You nod your head. Now, remember, nodding your head doesn't mean you agree. It means you understand. Now, if you don't understand, you can go, whoa, hold on. Can you explain that more to me? I don't know that I understand it completely. Can you break that down? Let's get a little bit granular on it so that I can fully understand where you're coming from. Tell me more. When somebody even feels like they're being listened to, they will find the patience to do that. In NLP, we call it mirroring and matching. If we match and we are calm, then we can expect that the response will be calm. Maybe not as calm as you're putting out, but close. You'll be drawing it in. And that's our goal, is that when we're calm, we can speak and think rationally. And that's so important in conflict, is to use the frontal neocortex, our critical thinking skills, to work together in problem solving, to work together in decision making and coming to an agreement that we both can feel good about. That is the process of managing conflict. That is the process of constructive conflict. And that's what I would like to title this. It's really about being constructive with our conflict and coming with outcomes better than we could have come up with individually. And that helps form our relationships. We actually, as we go through this process, this exchange of ideas and critical thinking together, you poke holes through my rationale. I want to know where it doesn't hold water. And you allow me to do the same so that we can come to some type of conclusion that says, oh, hey, let's plug up these holes together. Then we develop mutual trust. And then when we do have a conflict, we don't approach it with this, right? Because if it's not force against force and you pull that force away, there's no conflict, because they can't hit something that is opposing it. I want to learn more. Tell me about that. I want to understand. Maybe you're right. Imagine saying something like that in a conflict. You know what? You may be right. Help me understand. Do you think they're going to go, well, wait a second, you're supposed to be against me? No. No, I'm breaking those rules. I'm not going to be against you. I want for us to work something out so that we can both walk away feeling confident that we can make it through anything, that together we become a problem-solving, decision-making team with our values intact, with our integrity intact. So respect. And then the next one is the big word, listen, right? Dr. Stephen Covey brought up listen with the intent of understanding. Now, he wasn't the inventor of it, but he brings a really important point to this. Listen with the intent to understand, not to judge, not to ridicule, not to rebuke, but to fully understand where the other person's coming from and solicit more information if you're not clear. The whole brain chemistry at this point begins to change. We go from adversaries to advocates. It is possible. It is truly possible. And if it's in a relationship that truly, honestly matters to you. And when I say things like that, I'm talking about like our spouses or those who are closest to us. Or if we care about our career, certainly our bosses, our peers. If we want to build positive relationships, we have to be masters at constructive conflict. It's so important. I think you should be able to see that. Control our emotions. Be respectful. Listen with the honest intent to understand the other person. And then collaboration. Let's work together on this and feel good about what you and I both can put into this to make it a better outcome for both of us when we're done. And then I always say, appreciate. Thank the other person. Hey, you know what? I know it was hard, and I really appreciate you taking the time to help me understand and working with me to get a better outcome. I really appreciate it. That's the factor that builds trust. That's the moment where somebody said, wow, they didn't attack me. They listened to me. And although not all of my ideas survived the conversation, a part of my thoughts, a part of my thinking is what builds this overall outcome together. So I want you to think about what are some of the conflicts that you have going on right now among your team with another individual, and go to that person. Be courageous, right? Because leadership, whether it's formal or informal, leadership is about having the courage to have difficult conversations. And we have to practice, controlling our emotion and not flying off the handle and not taking things personally, but saying, I want to understand where you're coming from. Because I want for us not to be face against face, but I want us to be on the same side of the table, shoulder to shoulder, working on a better outcome. All right. I know it's really animated, but this is a very, very important skill set. I'm surprised that we don't teach this in our schools because it's so fundamental. Because at the end of the day, life and business are about relationships. All right. By close of business today, Hump Day will be officially over and we will be moving into another beautiful weekend. Don't let it be filled with conflict, my friend. I hope you have a great rest of the week. This is Coach Dave signing off, and I hope that you will lead well, my friend.